All right, welcome into the pod to win the game. I am Charles Robinson here with Jori, Epstein, Frank Schwab. All right, we're getting close. It's Thursday. Got past the Roger Goodell state of the league. Roger thinks officiating's awesome. He does not agree with many premises. Okay, there are a lot of.
He did not agree with you.
No,
that is.
It was not just me. There were others where he was like, "I do not agree with your points."
No. It wasn't I don't agree with your opinions. It was I don't agree with your facts. I've been told otherwise.
He did his own research.
He did.
What you were saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't listen to anybody. Everything's fine.
Oh,
Fishing's great.
Yeah.
No, it's actually the best it's ever been, according to Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been better. Interesting, obviously, comments from Roger in the State of the League address. Become a very fluffy event now. Used to be, I think, a little more hard-edged. Now it's more of a narrative, league-controlled deal. I thought that I ended up writing about, obviously I asked the question, I ended up writing about the state of the officiating, points that Aaron Rodgers brought up. Mike Vrabel sent in that mass email in October, basically putting him on blast, saying we need to devote resources to consistency here. Roger did not agree with it. He said, look, there's 40. He always goes to the aggregates. 42,000 plays, and X number of things could happen each play. So there's billions. No, I think he said millions, which is generally right, of things that could happen. He went to the instant replay thing, which is now their big thing. It's like, hey, everything's slowed down to the point now, and the cameras that we have, and so we see things other people. Okay, but you know what? The clock mismanagement issue in the AFC title game, that's not a camera issue, okay? That's just a game management issue. I think we can agree there have been problems with officiating, and yet Roger is saying it's the best it's ever been. I don't think people are going to agree with that.
I think what was also interesting is he could have easily said, here are ways in which it improved this year, here are ways in which I want to improve. Think about generally how he handled responses to diversity in coaching and general managers. He's like, look, Titans GM Ran Carthon met his new team via an accelerator program, but we will never be done with this. We always need to get better, et cetera. And then when he was not saying that on officiating, I was like, why is he so defensive? If you're that defensive, it makes me think, this is a problem, and it's hurting your game.
Protest too much, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've always said this about officiating. We saw with the replacement refs how bad it can get, and it gave me more respect for the NFL officials. I don't think they are as bad as everybody says. I really don't. The NFL game moves at the speed of light. It is so fast, I'm surprised they catch anything. But the officiating mistakes are overshadowing the games. They're getting too much wrong now. You talked about the AFC game. What about the NFC game where Devontae Smith makes a huge fourth down catch,
Fumbles it, right?
And he really didn't make a catch,
and
nobody caught it. And the instant quick replay thing never caught that. There's just too many things overshadowing the game, and goodness knows what if that happens in the Super Bowl?
Right.
What if we miss a big call in the Super Bowl?
Dun.
Yeah. So they need to address it. Just because they don't think it's as bad as everybody else does doesn't mean that they can't improve it. Like you were saying, Jori, everything else are we can improve there, we can improve there. Well, you can improve the officiating too. It can get better. I don't know how, though. That's the thing. I'm not a problem solver here. I don't know. Everybody says full-time refs. I don't know, because that's a lot of just procedural stuff. Maybe they need to get younger. Maybe they need to. I don't know. I don't know the solution,
now
but they do.
we're ageist when it comes to officiating.
Well, I think part of what probably upset him when I asked that question was because I brought up Aaron Rodgers' point. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is literally what officiating's made me do. Stand up and defend Aaron Rodgers' point of view in front of the commissioner.
Can I say, I was thinking about this after. I told someone, I was like, I totally agree with Charles where he's coming from in terms of the point. I think that you had the newsiest question of the entire day. And I was like, heck yeah, Yahoo Sports. But then you're like, but Aaron Rodgers says, and I'm like, so for people who spend 4 days in the dark think officiating needs to get better.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the voice of reason all of a sudden, yeah.
They're missing a lot of things like they're in the dark, so maybe there's a correlation. I mean, one of the things that Roger said, though, that made sense was, and Roger, it was funny kind of the way he addressed this. He's like, well, we have people that were in the league office that are working for networks that were never on the field. Okay, yeah, you're talking about Dean Blandino. You're talking about Mike Pereira, right? Mm-hmm. But Gene Steratore, who's what Rodgers brought up, John Perry, Terry McCauley, they all retired, I think it was 2017, 2018. Mm-hmm. And then they went over to networks where they're making a lot of money. And I think what Rodgers' point is he's like, look, if you paid them more, they'd probably stay longer. Or at the very least, and he didn't say this, but I think this was the point he was trying to make, they stay in the league's ecosystem of officiating, which if you're training other officials who are coming up, and you're trying to have a more diverse officiating staff, which they are. They're trying to be more inclusive with their officials. You want senior level officials who spent years and years in the program kind of running it, right? You could have said, hey, don't go take whatever you're getting from CBS or whatever. We'll pay you. Stay in, and we're not just going to have a league head of officiating. We're going to figure out a way to keep the experience in and hopefully improve this. And I think that's what Mike Vrabel, the point, I was talking to somebody with the Titans, and and even Mike kind of addressed this afterward, was he had a point, tried to he made it pretty nice, but it was just like, I don't want to watch something on TV, see a call that happened in our game, it calls this way in our game, and then it called some other way in their game. And he's like, I don't want to see that. There's got to be consistency. We should drive everything we can into improving this. And as Jori said, there should at least be a plan. How can we get, like you said, that's a great point. He's like, here's how we can get better and all these other things. And then officiating is like, we're fine.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Better than ever.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point on the institutional knowledge, that it's about who's teaching these guys and who's sharing the information, not just who's actually on the field. One thing I'd ask, because y'all probably follow other sports more closely than I do, how much of an officiating issue is there in basketball, baseball, hockey? Like, to what degree is the NFL's problems going beyond what other sports
I think it's just it's exponential because the NFL is so much popular and everything else. But people complain about NBA refs all the time.
Yeah.
NBA refs are pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I do believe that. Umpires, we're talking about robots, robotic umpires in baseball now because they miss so many strikes. But yeah, it's pretty much the same across all sports. People like complaining about officiating. They do. It's just the way it goes. That's never going to end. Roger Goodell could be right, and they could have perfect officiating, and people still find something to complain about.
And there's an offshoot. You know what? There was always going to be reverberations to accepting gambling culture, okay? And when you cross that line, when you're like, okay, we're embracing it now.
Don't get me started. This is a pet peeve of mine. The NFL's not rigged. Please, people, please.
But I know. There's a script.
There's a script.
Yeah, that, by the way, was one of the best. That was an awesome, complete offshoot from this, was players suddenly talking about this. When I got the script in training camp, I was really upset. It was great.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it was
But you're right. In that, once you get in bed with gambling, the conspiracy theorists now have their smoking gun.
Yeah, because now you're...
The Chiefs covered the spread because the NFL wanted. It's ridiculous, but it fuels them.
When you rejected it, you could sit there and say, well, why would we fix matchups or want this or want the best this or that or this person here or there? When you embrace it, it's, that drives now more money into a revenue stream that is an ancillary revenue stream for you. So, I mean, he's going to have to deal with it. I don't think it's going away. When you have a coach like Mike Vrabel, when you have Tony Dungy killed him all year long.
Yeah, he did.
And he was all over the place, offensive line. He's like, the DBs. And I'm like, man, I was like, I remember Tony criticizing it, and I go start doing some research. I'm like, man, he was criticizing it every single month. And then, Rodgers and then Mike Pereira's like, yeah, Rodgers got a point. One of your former executives, maybe hang on to guys. And
it's a problem. It's a problem that we're talking about. It was a problem that we've spent the first 10 minutes of a Super Bowl podcast talking about that.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And there's nothing wrong with saying, we need to improve in some places.
And I think it's worth talking about because I think the point is, if this happens in the Super Bowl, one of those calls happens in the Super Bowl. I was at the NFC Championship game, and when I saw that that ball had come out, and they didn't catch it, because remember, Kyle couldn't see it. Kyle's pissed afterward because, hey, someone else is supposed to catch it. We don't catch it. And
that's the thing I hate. Real quick as an offshoot, I don't like the whole instant, we're just going to go up to the booth and do this and that, because it's selective.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, Kyle could be like, well, why didn't you do that? Oh, that's not fair to us.
That's
you did that for their team. You didn't do this for this play.
And I think he did see it as a failure of that, too.
It is. It was absolutely. It's all or nothing. I don't agree. I like the system. Hey, Kyle, you want to challenge it? You challenge it. Otherwise, we're not going to look at it. When you're just picking and choosing some plays, that makes it inherently unfair.
And the league got lucky because Brock Purdy got hurt. The game became a blowout. But had that been a consequential, catch or not catch, we're at the end of the game. We're sitting there going, well, now we get to talk about this and how this changed, the outcome of the game eventually.
You're making me think that the league switched the script to Brock Purdy getting hurt.
Oh, yeah.
After that,
rewrite.
Your UCL is going to have to take a sacrifice.
Someone's like, ACL? No. UCL.
Yeah, they're trying to get ACL in there. He's like, UCL. Yes, all right, here you go. Here's my elbow.
Yeah, they're on the side. Okay, Kyle, so try to block Hassan Reddick with a tight end and just let him kill that kid. It'll be great for you. You'll have a total quarterback controversy and everything.
That's fun.
And Kyle going back to the director, don't you think it would have been just easier to call the play?
Anything else from Roger that stuck out? Obviously, Jori, you and I were sitting together. Was there anything else you thought?
Just a fun thing that I wrote about was when he was talking about the Pro Bowl game and it becoming a flag football game. He was like, yeah, this is a major pivotal moment for the league. The players have been embracing. He's like, I remember after last year's Pro Bowl game, on Tuesday, Russell Wilson called me and said, let's play flag. And I was like, one? Oh, also, to be clear, the question was nothing about the Pro Bowl game. A presumably Vegas-based reporter said, we just had the Pro Bowl games in Vegas. Super Bowl's coming next year. What can we expect? And Roger started his answer on topic saying, I would never put it past Vegas for something to be as big as possible, like this year's Pro Bowl games. And he's like, by the way, again, it's like someone had a bingo, going back to the script, someone had a bingo card, like, get Russell Wilson into this press conference. And then I'm also like, who thought that he was the one who was going to be, like, Roger, you didn't say this a year ago. You said this now. When, like, if you're trying to help your case, is that the most credible guy this year to help your case? You couldn't have been like, hey, Joe Burrow. Like, imagine how different that would have sounded if it was Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like, I was amused.
Officiating's great. And then I was talking to Russell Wilson.
About his foundation and where those funds are going. Oh, sorry.
Oh. Yeah. Also, I will say, for me, as soon as he said that, I was picturing, like, I feel like it's been at the Super Bowl before, given the Walter Payton Man of the Year stuff, that we see, like, Russ and Roger watching games together. And as soon as he said that, I'm just picturing them up in their little, like, suite together, being like, flag football.
Yeah. Not the most, I don't think it was the most popular set of things Roger could have said. So it balanced out the rest of the softballs, though. Derek Carr back at the Saints facility today. It's kind of interesting. This, to me, now makes me think. Going back a second time makes me think, okay, there's probably something here.
They weren't doing just due diligence.
Yeah, no.
First, the phrase that keeps coming up, due diligence. No. If you're bringing a guy in, you're interested.
It's one thing if he's there a day, goes through the motions, because that whole time it's like, well, he's got the no trade, and unless in a weird way, you almost are pitching yourself to Derek Carr in that situation because he can just no trade it and say, I'm going to go be a free agent. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you pitch it and you say, hey, the money you're supposed to get? Yeah, our cap is jacked, but we'll figure it out. We're going to get you paid, and now let us pitch the organization to you and how good this offense can be putting you in it. And I actually agree. I still think that offense has got a lot of tread on it. If, the talent, Olave's, there's certain
Yeah, but they're going to lose Michael Thomas. They're probably going to lose Kamara.
They lost Michael Thomas.
I was going to say, how much has he done lately?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I will say this about OBJ. There are people in Odell Beckham Jr.'s family who have wanted him to play for the Saints forever. Mm-hmm. So I would not write Odell off like the Saints, the Cowboys, the Giants. There was always, wherever Vaughn is, like it's just always the same group. His mom really, really wanted him to play for the Saints. I'm curious if Carr being put in that situation. I mean, they're not shutting it down. They're not tearing it up. They're saying like, okay, we're in the NFC South.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't like it. The Saints at some point have to have some reckoning of we can't just get the credit card out every offseason. Like, they're putting Band-Aids on everything. And is Derek Carr really taking them to anything special?
Okay. I would agree, but look at the NFC South, right?
That's true. I'll give you that. The NFC South is bad.
It's jacked up. It's completely, there's
But what
Falcons,
you're going to get in
Panthers, and Buccaneers are all going to have different quarterbacks.
You can get in with 8-9, Derek Carr, woo, yeah, great. I don't think this is a long-term plan for success, especially with their cap being what it is. I'm not a draft somebody. Start with a decent foundation here.
Jori, you need to listen to the Sunday Night Freestyle. He's going to be like Week 4, Derek Carr's early MVP. He just looks amazing. Like I know
Week
this is what's
6.
going to happen.
I told you. Remember Super Bowl week? I told you.
No, I mean, but as you said, Michael Thomas hasn't been there for a while, so I don't think that's that big of adjustment in terms of whether he's available or not. But
one thing I'd ask is when you think about like ownership, front office, as they see Sean Payton going off, and I know they've got picks in exchange for it, like. Do they feel like, hey, if Sean's going to be relevant again, we need to make sure we're relevant? Like, is there any kind of competitive juices going on
Mickey
there?
Loomis, the GM, probably.
I can see that. Yeah.
And I could totally see Mickey Loomis.
Look, this year, Derek Carr was better than Russell Wilson. This year.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Where's the hesitation there?
Well, no, because I'm like, well, they both. I mean, yeah.
No, he was.
Yeah, I know.
And so
Derek Carr was pretty good until Josh got there, but I had to
Right.
squeeze in Josh McDaniels
I know
somehow.
you
somehow.
did. All right.
And so I'm like, maybe they're like, oh, let's at least get the quarterback we want, and then we can. I think there's a little bit of a motivates you when your ex is doing something.
Yeah, and you know, Loomis is competitive. He is. I think he and Sean were even competitive when they were together inside the organization. That's a really good
Let's
point.
flip this around, though. Why would Derek Carr go to the Saints? Well, like, what appeals to him about New Orleans? This is not a team that's set up to win. I'm sorry.
Oh, see, I disagree.
Really?
Yeah.
You think? Okay.
I disagree.
I just think they're mediocre at best. They're just shooting for a 9-win season.
We'll run it back. Given what I mean, let's see where all the quarterbacks settle out.
Sure.
But in that division,
The division's bad. I do have to grant that.
I think they look and they go, okay, we've got a couple young guys. We could tear it up now, but we still got Kamara. There's still some people they're paying, you know, and
You think Kamara's there next year?
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, only because we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's fair.
Tough choice, yeah.
It's a fair question. It's definitely a fair
Yeah,
question.
just capping all the off-field stuff.
Right, all the off-field stuff in the cap, obviously. Jori, the Cowboys, they hire Schotty. Brian Schottenheimer becomes the OC there. Obviously, Kellen Moore ends up with the Los Angeles Chargers. Seems like a decent. I mean, look, the outcome for Kellen, I think, is definitely decent. Schottenheimer, it's probably a decent outcome for Mike McCarthy because they got a background. What do you think? I mean, the hire of Schottenheimer, what's that going to do for this offense? And I mean, just the difference between he and Kellen.
Yeah, so I guess like nitpicky thing, more of a shuffle than a hire. He'd been in the building the last year,
right.
And he had been working kind of as a consultant, not just with the offense, but also with the defense, helping Dan Quinn in terms of some advanced reports. I think one thing that is relevant to keep in mind here is that Mike McCarthy's first NFL opportunity was back in the day in Kansas City for Marty Schottenheimer,
Yep.
father of Brian. So make of that what you guys will.
Nepotism in the NFL coaching circle?
I know,
What?
Hiring your buddies?
No
I know.
way.
Never happens.
That's it. I mean, look, does he have experience? Yes. I think it'll be fine. I don't know enough about Schottenheimer to get a sense of what impact, if any, he's going to meaningfully have. I think my read of this whole situation, and I talked to Jerry Jones for about 20 minutes last week at the Senior Bowl outside the Cowboys suite at practice, and our conversation, my takeaway, though Jerry didn't say this explicitly, was Jerry hired Mike McCarthy for two primary reasons. Elevate Dak's game as a quarterback after his experience with guys like Aaron Rodgers and take the Cowboys deep in the playoffs. Not to the playoffs, but deep in the playoffs.
Right.
And those two things have not substantially occurred since Mike's been here. Look, the first year, Dak's injury, there's nothing he could do. Everyone was injured, including Dak by week 5, pretty seriously. Year 2, they make it to the playoffs. Year 3, they win a wild card game. But that's not really what they're here for, and I don't think. And when you look at the way they lost in the divisional round against San Francisco, the defense played good enough to win.
Oh, yeah.
The offense, and Dak in particular, really struggled that game, and that was a game that if you're going to win the NFC, this was a wide open quarterbacking year, and there were some people, other than interceptions, who would have said he was the best quarterback over the course of his career playing in the NFC playoffs this year. I think that Jerry's saying, I'm paying you to do these things. I need to see that you can do them now. Right. I think that Mike McCarthy and Kellen had some philosophical differences in terms of scheme, in terms of spacing, in terms of the way the quarterback and the receivers were communicating ahead of time, which they had a lot of miscommunications this year, which were a big factor in Dak's 15 interceptions. And I think that he's like, look, Mike, show me what you can do. Like, I don't want you being a walk-around anymore. I'm interested whether Mike McCarthy wanted to call plays. I have my doubts about that. He hasn't said anything recently. And I think the biggest thing is, what can he do for Dak? What is this going to look like? And how do they make sure he's on the same page as the receivers? And how different is it going to look? I do think there are going to be some different concepts instead of like a little more take what the defense gives you, be a little less aggressive. And I think that's something that happened this year is Kellen's concepts paired with Dak's belief that he could make these throws now led to a little over-aggressiveness that hurt the team. And the reality is, even if Dak's seeing the defense a certain way, if his receiver doesn't see it that way, they're not doing it. So I think that's what most we need to think about. And then for Kellen, I mean, look, Kellen landed in a great spot.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert's arm, there's tools on that offense. I think if he does really well with them, he'll play himself into a head coaching opportunity pretty quickly, living in Southern California with his family. So it really wasn't one of those things where I'm like, oh, they fired him. Like, that seemed, I mean, they announced his Chargers appointment less than 24 hours after the Cowboys announced they were parting ways. It seemed very much like he was ready to move and they figured it out, and let's see.
Yeah, I do wonder, though, with, just from talking to people that kind of described how everything developed, it was clear Mike wanted Schottenheimer. It was clear Kellen knew it. And at the time, I was like, well, look, it's like a firing. Like, I guess he had, a year left on his deal. So to me, this was like a firing. But the way it was described to me was, look, they both looked at each other. They have an agent in common. It was like, hey, there's a resolution to this for both of you. There's a job waiting for this guy. And, Mike, you can bring Schottenheimer in. And my question was, like, do you think that part of this is Mike knowing Jori wants to see some development next year?
Yeah.
He does not want to see another backward step from Dak. And Mike is sitting there thinking, well, okay, if Kellen sticks around and I'm not calling the plays, that means that I'm putting my future and my viability moving forward now in his hands.
Right.
So I'm with you. I'm sure that Mike is sitting there thinking, okay, well, there's no buffer anymore. Like, I'm calling this is on me. So if this does not progress, but then there's the flip side of it. Well, you don't want to hand that off either, right? You don't want someone else handling it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it looks.
Here's the question, though. You said Mike wanted to hire Schottenheimer. Why? What is Brian? He's been such an uninspiring offensive coordinator.
But it doesn't matter what your opinion is. Mike trusts him.
Well, yes, but
a lot of people get hired on trust, Frank.
Yes, and nepotism and buddy system.
Sure.
And when
all the time.
I can't look at Brian Schottenheimer's resume and say, yeah, that guy deserved another shot. It's just an uninspiring, okay, we're going to take 3 steps back with the offense because he's not really one of those modern great thinkers in the offensive scheme. I don't know. I just looked at this hire and was like, really? That's who you're bringing in to fix your offense?
And when I look at that, I say a big thing they talked about, and this is kind of like the corporate line right now with the Cowboys, is we need a new voice in there for Dak. Like, even if Kellen's a good coordinator, there's been some stagnancy here. It's not working. We need a new voice. You didn't get a new voice. You got a guy in the building and a guy who used to be an offensive coordinator in the building. Like, there were some awesome options out there. I mean, one, you could have gone if Cliff Kingsbury ever comes back from Thailand, maybe see what he could do type route. And then on the other hand,
call it from Thailand.
Honestly, the guy who I wanted, I'm writing a story on him this week because he's here in Phoenix with us, is like Brian Johnson, the Eagles quarterbacks coach, has really had some success there the last couple of years with Jalen Hurts. And he was Dak's quarterbacks coach in college at Mississippi State.
And that's the kind of hire I wanted to see him make something inspired and wow, this could really be.
It's like
this is like Schottenheimer.
He's got the background with Dak. That was the best Dak's ever played in all facets of the game. He has experience as a college offensive coordinator in multiple schools, so he's seen that. And it's like, fine if you want to have Mike call a play, someone like that, or even like Thomas Brown from the Rams they interviewed. And he's got experience as a running backs coach, experience as a tight ends coach. He's Sean McVay's assistant head coach. Like, there were some guys out there who I was like, this would be really awesome. And or even if you wanted to go in-house, I was thinking, okay, Lunda Wells, their tight ends coach. The tight ends had the best year of like in terms of outperforming their expectations. They had a rookie 4th rounder and a rookie undrafted guy be meaningful contributions in addition to Dalton Schultz, who earned the franchise tag. That guy's got offensive line experience. He's got different things. Like, there were so many ways you could have bettered it, and I prove me wrong, but did they?
Uninspiring. That's just, fine. I guess.
Go back to every time Schottenheimer's been put in this position elsewhere too. It's always the same reaction.
I know.
Like, really?
Yeah, it's like,
okay. Let's see how this is. I feel like we know what the book is. All right, we got to talk about the game here, obviously.
There's a game?
Yeah, we're actually going to.
Charles is losing it. Been a long week.
Yeah, we're going to actually devote some time to this game. I'm curious now that we've been through the run of players talking and the experience and all, talked about the quarterbacks and all these different things. I would like each of you to sort of season on what you think is a player that's got to come up big in this game. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, to me, I think that you have to figure out, if you're Kansas City, you cannot let Hassan Reddick disrupt this game. Like, he was all year long, I think he was just not in Philly, but outside of Philly, I think a lot of people did not catch on to how disruptive he really was as a defender. I mean, he was truly a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, people start to watch the Eagles, so maybe hadn't seen the Eagles, and they're like, oh, my God. Like, this guy's extremely disruptive. He knocks Brock Purdy, obviously, out of the game and changes the face of that NFC Championship game. I can tell you this: they will not be throwing a tight end now. I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be a tight end standing in his way this time.
I mean, it's a pretty good tight end.
It is a pretty good tight end, but still, I think there's going to be a little more attention than asking a tight end to single up on him. So I'm curious, maybe players that you've both kind of looked at as potential. I mean, we could obviously talk about the quarterbacks. We'll get to the quarterbacks in a minute, but. Just other players that I think can be disruptors and really alter that. I mean, you go back to like Denver's Super Bowl, Von Miller, like destroyed the entire game. Like the Super Bowl's had a lot of players who, hell, Malcolm Butler, last time we're here, destroys an entire game at the end when you least expect it happening. Who else has that potential?
I feel like I get biased toward guys I write about, but Chiefs cornerback Jalen Watson, rookie 7th-round pick. He first kind of had his breakout game against the Chargers earlier this year when he had I think it was like a 99-yard pick six of Justin Herbert that totally changed the momentum of the game, like swung the win probability by something like 54%, the most next-gen had seen in 3 years. And then you get to the playoffs, interception against Trevor Lawrence, interception against Joe Burrow. And, I mean, he's kind of like got that eye for the ball. He's one-handed picks everything. He's the type of guy who... I mean, you've got great receivers here, but it's like maybe I don't know. I just think like you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Devonta Smith, but if Jalen Hurts gets off, which again, I'm saying this knowing that Jalen Hurts had 6 interceptions all season, but if something happens and that line really gets to him and a Chris Jones is knocking him off his game, because that's what I think when I look at Jalen's interceptions, not to take anything away from them, or Jalen Watson's interceptions, I should say, but it's because of the defensive line pressure that he's getting these opportunities.
Right.
Like, there are all times the quarterback was hit. So I think you think, like, oh, Chris Jones could wreck this game, and he totally could. But what happens is Chris Jones wrecks the play, and then Jalen Watson capitalizes and brings it home.
I like that. You stole my guy. It's Hassan Reddick. Like, I mean,
yeah,
that is...
Frank wrote about him today, so I think he gets the rights.
Yeah.
You can have him.
He just jumped in. He was going to throw it to me, and then he's like, he's going to take Hassan Reddick. I'm just going to get this.
We see right through this.
They both have one. I saw a stat, and this blew my mind. Frank Clark is 3 sacks from being the all-time sack leader in the play in postseason history.
Really?
That's insanity.
What?
Yeah, that's I saw, and apparently it's legit.
Wow,
3 sacks from being the all-time sack
crazy.
leader in postseason history.
Played a lot of games, but no, I do think Reddick and their whole defensive line, Sweat, Hargrave, Cox. I mean, that is such a key in this game. But I'll go a different direction since you stole Reddick from me. Thanks, Bree. But it's a running game.
Thanks for reading.
I think, yeah, appreciate it. It's a running game. It's a running game of the Eagles. All those guys, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders. If they can run on you, if the Philadelphia Eagles figure out, hey, our offensive line's getting over on these guys, we're just getting it up the middle, 5, 6, 7 yards a pop, they're not going to pass. And they're not going to test Jalen Hurts' shoulder, which I still have questions about.
Exactly.
We still have not seen him in a situation of Jalen. 2 minutes left. You got to throw it downfield.
Yeah, you got to crank it.
We haven't seen that yet, and I don't know if he's perfectly healthy or not. But they don't need that at their running game is so good. I remember doing the Sunday night freestyle right after the Packers Eagles game on Sunday night when the Eagles ran for like 362 yards whatever. It's just that's the kind of game they could have. I mean, they're that good in the running game. So the Chiefs have to figure out, okay, we need to slow down the running game. We need to test Jalen Hurts and make sure he can pass the ball. That's the only way they're going to win this game, I think. If the Eagles can get over in the running game, it's going to be a long day for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I mean the Eagles have the line to,
that line is really good. Yeah,
it's sick. I mean and I think they're in a pretty good place right now in terms of health. And what about the quarterbacks? We're focusing on this first time we've had 2 African American quarterbacks playing each other in the Super Bowl. Pretty amazing. I think it is one of those moments that not only shapes moving forward, but I mean it also. I think it's good that these weren't like the Trevor Lawrence. I know we look at Mahomes now, but let's remember when Mahomes entered the draft. He's coming out of Texas Tech, and you're like, man, he's got a cannon, but hey, he's moving up the draft.
Yeah.
No one knew he was going to be potentially this guy. I mean, obviously maybe some of the evaluators were like, he's got this opportunity.
A lot of people said they know. Say they know.
Well, yeah.
A lot of people,
In retrospect, everybody. Yeah. One of my favorites of all time was Bill Polian saying, yeah, we had a first-round grade on Brady. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You did not have a first-round grade on Brady. But
what was his grade on Lamar?
Let's move on from that.
Wow.
Look at that. Like a kill Bill Polian show, okay?
Yeah. Bill Polian over catching strays
left and right. No, but I mean, Mahomes coming from Texas Tech, lightening up the way that he has. Jalen Hurts being a guy that transfers, really has to reprocess his game in some sense and then also develop when he gets to this level. Also, Mahomes sat his entire rookie year. You don't see the guy. I mean, guys really don't do that anymore, particularly with that skill set. The longer we see him, the more I'm like, look, Alex Smith, like, hey, man, leader, I get it. But good God, like,
here's
what a gold star sitting
that happened.
Real quick, everybody's like, oh, Mahomes is so good because he's sat here. Maybe they win another Super Bowl that year. He's that good. Like, if you put him in for that Alex Smith on that team, why do we just assume that it was like, oh, Mahomes sat? And maybe he would have been great as a rookie, too.
I remember,
he's great.
Listen, I remember Trez telling me, like, no, really, like, man, this guy is a practice. Like, you hear these dudes out of practice. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, you're covering the team. You're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're eating the cheese. I'm like, there's just no. And then as soon as he started playing, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm like,
start against Denver at the end of the year. And
I
then
said
the
to
preseason.
Trez, I'm like, how did they sit there the entire year watching this and go and not blink? Not go, scrap that. Like, I don't care if we're winning or not.
Like,
we got to scrap
Alex, hey, you've seen Patrick in practice.
And
Sorry, Alex.
They had
to go to the
success.
bench.
But I think it's good to get a game like this where it's not just, I mean, because we go crazy over, Trevor Lawrence and the people who come in the league and we're like, it's a 20-year talent. Look, Mahomes, he had buzz and, clearly moved up the draft board and there was excitement, but no one was like, that is a all-time league-shaping talent. Hurts, it was like, what the hell are they doing? They just took this guy in the second round. Why are they doing this? What's the deal with Wentz? And then even after we started watching Hurts, we're like, well, he's got a ways to go. Like, there's definitely tools there. Can he get better? And he has. So it's interesting that when it finally happens, it's not like the, slam dunk. We saw it coming. These were the two guys that ultimately would end up in this kind of a game.
But as we've talked about, and I think you wrote about, the Eagles got here by not just saying, like, okay, Carson Wentz, like, what are we going to do? Like, no, they were willing to start with their backup plan. And I don't mean backup quarterback plan. I mean, like, backup team-building strategy plan.
Yeah.
And they were willing to do that. And, I mean, drafting Mahomes when they still had Alex Smith in Kansas City. Like, these were teams that were thinking about this and that were really saying, like, here's the strategy we're going to use to get where we need to go.
Yeah, when I wrote about this week, the contrast is really interesting to me in that even, at the Fox thing, I talked to Jimmy Johnson, and he was like, it used to be that you could just have a good quarterback, didn't turn it over. Now you need a franchise quarterback. You need one of those top. Maybe not. Jalen Hurts, are we sure? Like, are we sure he's a top 5 guy? Had a great year. I know that.
Well, we're going to find out. I mean,
right. Yeah. But it is, one team said, we have a franchise quarterback. We could trade away Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes is going to figure it out. He's that good.
Yeah, and the Eagles said we had to go get that guy.
And the Eagles said, we're going to build this super team around our quarterback who is improving, and I give him all the credit in the world for his improvement.
And was part of the MVP race until he got hurt.
Right, correct. But I look at that Eagles team as more of they built everything to make Jalen Hurts succeed, and you can do that still in the NFL. You don't need a top 3 guy. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo almost won a Super Bowl. Jared Goff almost won a Super Bowl. Nick Foles did win a Super Bowl. You can still build that way. And I think it's a very interesting contrast in roster building here. And nothing against Jalen Hurts. Again, great year. He's ascending. He might be a top 5 guy. Maybe I don't know it yet. Like top 5, like if you were redrafting the league, top 5. But I do believe that they're just different quarterbacks. Mahomes is the MVP. Hurts is a guy who benefits greatly from having an unbelievable supporting cast.
It's really a perfect snapshot of when we were coming into this season, exactly what you said. It was like, well, Hill's out, so the presumption in the franchise is Mahomes can raise all boats. He can be the one who can lift everybody up.
Did.
And then in Philadelphia, it was, hey, they're packing it all around to give Hurts every chance to succeed by building the team as best they possibly could around him. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how they approached it. I think, though, they both exceeded. I think Mahomes, I was like, oh, my God, Mahomes, this is amazing that he's doing this well. And Hill is killing it.
Hill was all pro.
Yeah, and then Hurts, it was like, it didn't take long. It was like the first month I remember remember if it was like Louis Reddick, who it was like in the offseason, like, hey, this guy is going to be he's going to be MVP. And I was like, come on, really? And month in, I'm like, whoa. Like, it was.
That, like, week 2 game against Minnesota, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
He looked amazing.
They were early in the season. You could tell right away. Eagles really good.
I want to ask you both. Jori mentioned it. I wrote it. It hasn't been up yet. But I talked to Jeff Lurie, the Eagles owner, about being able to move off of the Carson Wentz decision. I had talked to Kevin Demoff and Les Snead about this in the summer, about moving off of Jared Goff. So you have these two teams that signed the extensions. They were the right thing at the time. It went wrong. And then they're staring at, like, are we really going to do this? Like, we're going to ditch this after we just signed massive quarterback deals that made these guys both top 5, 6, at that time. I mean, not even top 5, 6. I think they were both top 4, 3. And, it was interesting because Demoff and Howie Roseman both said the same thing. I talked to Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM. Such a huge part of this, and I think fans all should listen to this because it strikes at ownership. Both situations, you had to have owners where they sat down and were like, okay, here's the assessment. It didn't work. Like, it's like this now. It's not this, it's this. And we think it's going to stay flat. Mm-hmm. That arrow's not going to point up. We got a problem here. Either we eat it and it's going to be terrible. PR, you're going to pay out millions of dollars. The accelerated, we've already got this guaranteed money that's built in. It's going to screw up our cap. And in both situations, the owners were like, do it. Do the right thing. Like, if this is the right thing, if you're telling me it's the right thing. And Lurie, he was just like, you can't be scared of that. He was like, and it was funny. He was like, it's, just deal with the money. That's just the money. I'm like, I guess you got a lot of money.
By the way, are you sending this story directly to the Denver Broncos? Are you going to get them on this?
Well, no, but it plays in, and I'd love to hear both of you think about this. Like, don't you think for, like, Denver, the Arizona Cardinals, like, if you start to get down the road on these tack-on extensions, now it's different because the money is different now, and the way they're structured is different now. But if you get down the road and you're looking at Kyler Murray, and it's not happening, or you're looking at and Sean Payton's like, hey, you know what? I don't think it's just there's more of a fundamental problem than I expected. Yeah, it makes me wonder if now it just sort of changes the dynamic where you know how the league is. Everybody always looking for an example. Now they have an example 2 straight years where they saw teams pull the plug on something that was painful, and look what happened. They were able to turn it around into actually building the Super Bowl team they thought they had.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help the case that the Broncos gave away a lot of their picks in getting Russell Wilson because even though I know now the Rams are giving away their picks, it's like they gave away their picks to move on from that problem, and the Broncos have that problem and already gave away their picks. Because I think one of the things you do, and this is something I talked to the Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah about last offseason, where it's like draft the quarterbacks. Like, you don't have to, this doesn't have to be a burn everything down, get the quarterback, and rebuild back up. Like, you should kind of start bringing these guys in over time so that when you get that quarterback, it's ready. Kind of what you're saying about the Eagles building around Jalen Hurts. I think what's interesting, like what comes to mind when you mention these teams are, like when the Falcons were getting rid of Matt Ryan, and everyone was like, what is Terry Fontenot doing? Like, all this. And it's like, he's like, we have to do this. First of all, he didn't sign that contract; he inherited it. And again, I don't know where the Falcons are in terms of how many years away, but I think they're following a similar model in that if the quarterback's not working, don't stick on. And I think there are so many teams in this league, the Cowboys among them, who are loyal to a fault. And there are also a lot of teams who they just don't want to be wrong about the contracts they did. And I think that the Eagles and Rams showed humility that we were wrong and we want to be right, and we're going to do what it takes, which requires admitting you were wrong.
Right.
It's just the fear of the unknown at quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Many teams, not the Eagles in this sense, but teams are just, well, if we cut loose our quarterback, I'm going to get fired in a year because we're going to go 4-13. So we're just going to pray and hope that Russ works out in year 3 or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. So, but it is interesting that now the NFL copycat league, to use a cliche. Now you have examples of, hey, we're not just going to, this is sunk cost. We're just moving on. We're not going to stick it out with Carson Wentz and just hope next year's better. So, yeah, I think it's a very interesting sea change that way.
Do you think between the two quarterbacks, obviously there's been the focal point on the injuries. Jalen Hurts is still, I think, a complete mystery. Like, Hurts is like, I'm not right. That's what he says. I'm not right. It's the shoulder. you and I talked about it. He's not been in a situation where he had to crank it downfield consistently, or in a pinch where it's like, hey, 2 minutes, you got to move it, you got to get it down. And watching him against the Niners, it felt like every time he threw outside the numbers down the field, I was like, it is not accurate. And remember, Devonta Smith makes that catch. It was insane, and it wasn't a catch, but it was, even for him to wrangle it, it was insane. That was basically it. That was the successful play that he had.
Yeah. That was the only downfield pass I gave him.
Yeah, so we don't
completion.
We're at this point, we don't know if we're going to see Hurts, and I think you're right in terms of the running game. I don't think they expose him. I just can't. He's not right. You're definitely not exposing him from a running standpoint unless he makes that decision. Probably wouldn't make that decision also. And then you look at Mahomes, and it's like, hey, they ain't, it's 2 more weeks and the ankle's better, but realistically, we don't. They could both get out there and be hobbled. At this point, do you think, let's just equalize it? Say they both go out and it's sort of an equal situation. Neither's really right. Maybe you don't get the A game from either. Is that not a pretty significant advantage for the Eagles? I mean, I guess because it comes down to what is the surrounding pieces and then the defenses. And I feel like that's why a lot of people are leaning into the Eagles.
Yeah, I think if both of them come out and the quarterbacks are, let's say, 50% of what they could be or something like that, the problem is with that theory, we've seen Mahomes just play and wreck his body to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jalen Hurts can't, but we haven't seen it yet.
Right, you have seen Mahomes do it.
They were both injured in the conference championship game.
That's a really good point.
And what did Jalen do and what did Mahomes do? And it wasn't just his arm. It was you saw him throw and then hobble on the leg he just planted on, but then he'd scramble like crazy the next play. And so I think that I don't even think that a 50% Mahomes looks like a 50% Mahomes because he's figured out that whole way of leaving his body now. He's in February 14th, 15th, 16th, best of luck to him. But yeah, that's why I think it's not relevant. Though I do agree the Eagles have the talent around them.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with that. We saw Mahomes 2 weeks ago, and if you're just watching that game and you didn't know, you'd be like, yeah, that's Patrick Mahomes. 326, 2 touchdowns, looked good, ran for the first down on a key play. I think he's fine. I really do. Or at least he's going to look like he's fine on Sunday. I don't think. I have no concern about Patrick Mahomes and his injury. I do have concern about Jalen Hurts because we just haven't seen it. I thought, we talked about this, I believe, on the Sunday Night Freestyle. At the Giants game, I was like, he's fine. He's good. No problem. And then the 49ers game happens. They have nothing going on downfield. You're like, yeah, the 49ers defense is really good. But maybe Jalen Hurts, all this, when an athlete comes out and says, I'm not right, and he said that in various ways, even this week, that's telling because we know every other player is like, I'm good. Yeah, I'm not. They don't want to talk about it. Hurts is like, yeah, I'm not 100%. Well, okay, and now I can't all of a sudden trust that he's going to be 100% or even close in the Super Bowl. I just don't know.
Right.
I'm pretty sure on Mahomes, I have no idea.
Do you think, is he playing possum?
Could be.
Do you think he's actually feels better than he's letting on?
It could be too. I just don't know. It's a mystery to me. Hurts is a mystery. Mahomes is going to be fine, I think. I don't know. I just maybe I'm being dumb about it because he did just have a high ankle sprain 17 days ago or whatever it was. I just don't have any concern about Patrick Mahomes' injury. I haven't even thought about it much. He talks about it I'm like, yeah, okay, he's going to be fine.
I think, though, Jori brings up a great point about Mahomes, too. I remember years ago, I met with somebody from the Patriots. I was at the Combine, and he's like, we were kind of just talking about the season. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, Tom's shoulder was screwed up the entire season. And it was never an injury report, of course. I'm like, yeah, it's funny how
he got surgery on it after the season, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I was like, I never know, I didn't notice. That's crazy to me because he had a pretty good season. And he was just like, it's the experience. It's what he brings to the table. It's, the years of, and Mahomes does have some of that.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with what Jori said.
He knows how to.
He looks like he's not hurt because he just has an ability to compartmentalize everything and just be like, Favre was the same way, famously, almost. He could be, dragging his leg, but you didn't really know it in his play, and Mahomes is the same way.
But maybe we learned that about Hurts in this game.
Yeah, that's true.
How did y'all feel about Hurts in the divisional round game? Because I feel like that's maybe a better test of what he can do, given that there was a quarterback on the other side.
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I really did.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He wasn't tested really. It's when you're in this game and you're up 24-zip almost after an opening kickoff, it's like you could throttle everything down because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
if it's 24-24 or 5 minutes left and the Eagles get the ball back, what can Jalen Hurts do? Can he push it downfield if he has to? I just don't know the answer to that.
And
Maybe.
And how confident are y'all that he will run without any hesitation?
And that's a good question.
And should he? Is it worth the risk? I mean, if you're Shane Steichen.
Yeah, I think this is just the all-in, like whatever.
Yeah.
Remember,
I mean,
9 months after
Mahomes takes off running against the Bengals. He gets pushed in the sideline, and
Right.
you're like, at that point, when you're at that stage, maybe he hasn't run all game, but I'm pretty sure he's like
at the end, right?
Straps off.
Right.
Like
I
it's
get
time
like
to
the
go.
Super Bowl, you put everything on the line.
That's,
but if
it
it's
is.
the first quarter, I mean, do you want Gardner Minshew playing the second half?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect early on that you risk that. But if you get into like Frank says a 2-minute scenario, and
I kind of think it's full game. I think
Really?
it's just like whatever. I got 9 months or 7 months, I guess, until my next game. We're gonna go off with this.
I don't know.
I think there's gonna be a lot of design runs.
Make sure
I
the
get it,
paint
but
shots are ready.
Yeah. And if it breaks in the middle, it breaks in the middle. But you just got to play. I think the Jalen Hurts is going to be. I agree that there's some trepidation when you got a hurt shoulder, but I think the game plan, the play calling, is going to be like, hey, whatever. This is Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We don't. If you screw the shoulder up worse today, well, okay, you can have surgery Tuesday.
It's also a contract extension stage too. So let's not.
Good thing Lamar Jackson's not playing in this game.
No. I don't mean that from the standpoint of. I think the opposite. I think you lay it out. Like if you're like, hey, if I'm gonna hurt myself, I'm gonna hurt myself. I'm gonna show you the reason why.
I'm worth this.
I'm worth this. Like I'm not gonna hold anything back.
Yeah, and if y'all haven't read it, C-Rob had a great piece on just the Jalen Hurts contract implications, what the market has shown, like really going in depth on how we got here, both with him and with the landscape. So.
And it's interesting too because you have the two quarterbacks. I think it's especially germane to this game because you're looking at Mahomes, and it's funny because Jamar Chase just came out and said, "Well, I think Joe Burrow wants to sign a kind of a deal that will keep the gang together." Right? That he's talking about the Mahomes deal. He's talking about the full I'll give you max control. You give me a 10-year contract with a structure of rolling guarantees that pretty much makes sure I'm going to earn the $500 million that Mahomes basically set out there. And in exchange, what you're giving up is, well, I know during, Mahomes was like, it's not like it's a great contract, but it's a pretty good contract, and it gets better as it gets older because his salary doesn't fly out of whack. And you can still continue to add. I mean, by the time the next few quarterbacks go through the negotiations, Mahomes is going to be like 7th or 8th in quarterback, AAV. So,
average annual value.
Yeah, average annual value. And whereas
Thank you. I didn't know. I was like, AAV. I need to get out my phone and Google it or something.
But you look at Hurts, and I think it probably falls into more of the Kyler Murray type of deal, which is really, that's what the standard now, I think, that in terms of players and teams, you wrestle. Players really want to do 4 years. Teams want 6. They want the Josh Allen deal. They want the tack on. They want 8 years total control if you're starting after the remaining 2 years you have. And then you settle on the Kyler deal, where it's really 5-year tack on, 7 years of control. But that is very different than the Mahomes deal because it's still, you come up for negotiation in your early 30s. And by the time you come up for that negotiation, who the hell knows where quarterback salaries are at that point? Mahomes really did leave a ton of money on the table.
Yeah, no, it was not. It was a team-friendly deal, and he'll be fine financially.
Oh, no,
That said, he's not earning what he's worth.
No, it's the Brady model. Like it is, and it was different for Brady. But I mean, Brady never his entire career, he left hundreds of millions of dollars on the table because he wasn't constantly like, I got to be at the top. I got to come to the top. I got to come to the top. Whereas like Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, those guys, every time they were up, it was like, hey, lot me back to the top. Rotate me back up. And you would hear complaints from inside the Colts. You'd hear complaints from inside the Saints, where it's just like, this guy always maxes it out. So we always got to kind of deal with that. I think that matters. It'll be interesting to see, I think, what the Eagles ultimately end up doing with Hurts in that situation.
One factor of that at the time with Brady was that he was married to Giselle, who was making even more money than him. So I think that's an extremely relevant factor.
A little bit.
It's kind of jacked up, though. Like, they're not, Jalen, are you married? What's your spouse name? It's not like
she like a surgeon or something.
Exactly. Let's factor this in.
Russ, Sierra.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Russ didn't exactly give a break.
One thing I'm curious about is I'm always interested when these guys get signed to a deal like a Kyler. Okay, now your head coach is out, your coordinator, you're totally switching over. do y'all think the Cardinals are taking a coach from this game? And if so, like, is Shane Steichen gone?
Right.
And if so, who do you think is going to be offensive coordinator? I'm interested in terms of what that means for Jalen. And again, I know I wrote a story on it this year of Jalen had 7 coordinators, 7 systems in 7 years. This is his first year with continuity. But I'm interested. I don't think it's the number one factor in negotiations. And I'm also curious from the Cardinals standpoint, do you think they've already decided? Or do you think that, like, based on how the offense works in this game, that's a factor in whether Shane Steichen gets Cardinals?
I would assume the Cardinals and probably even the Colts. There's some kind of dominoes and I'm probably giving the Colts too much credit.
Yeah, you're getting Colts way too much.
They're
just like Jeff Saturday. Just keep it cool. We'll hire you in a week. Don't worry.
I'm like, look, logically, if we're sitting there and we're staring at those teams, especially with the Colts, you're like, well, who is there even? Who's the person at this point that they're potentially looking at?
They need a third 14-hour interview with somebody.
With Arizona. That makes a lot of sense.
I think
Has
Steichen
he interviewed?
Who's requested? I'm gonna have to.
Because that's the thing. I don't think he wasn't like a second
interview
interview guy, but I feel like the Super Bowl is a part of that. And then, and I know Schefter reported yesterday. So Thursday, so that was Wednesday that he reported it, that they're not going to announce a coach till after the Super Bowl, which made me think, if we know that, is that because not necessarily that they know they're hiring someone from this game, but they at least want to interview someone from this game.
Well, I would want to get Steichen. I would. Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting there. When I went into Philly in the summer, he was one of the guys. I wasn't even there to see him, but he came into the office I was sitting in. We just started chatting. I had gone through Las Vegas. He used to be a coach, obviously, from the Las Vegas area, and he started telling me all this stuff about Jalen. And again, I was just I'm such an idiot. I was so tuned out on Jalen. I'm just like, okay, they're going to do the whole, no, really, he's the guy. But he was as optimistic as Nick Sirianni was, and just being adamant that really this guy, we're seeing it. We're seeing. And
who calls plays, Sirianni?
No, I think Steichen calls the plays. Yeah.
I don't know the exact mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at what the exact. I wonder if it's like an Andy Reid, Doug Peterson split, where it's like Andy's calling most of it, but Doug Peterson calls X percent.
You can have a second and 4 here.
Yeah, you're always you're always putting like percentages on it. He's like, I let him call plays in the fourth quarter, and I'm like, this is. Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure there is some share there.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this: like I would be surprised as attractive a candidate he has been externally if teams didn't think he had a big hand in the play calling.
Yeah. I think he does.
Because it doesn't come up a lot. Honestly,
if you're Philly, who are you making coordinator next year? If he goes,
it's Brian Johnson, right?
I'm biased. I'm ready.
Like,
why?
but I mean, that makes perfect sense.
But that's all.
And that would give Jalen the continuity.
You typically go to the quarterback's coach. I mean, come on.
And they got a good one.
Kevin O'Connell was going to be the offensive coordinator. Zach Taylor. I mean, like that's just the sort of the progression. Whoever's working with the quarterback and developing the quarterback probably.
Right, Buffalo. Although it didn't work great for Buffalo.
You want to make a pick?
Yeah.
You got to make picks on this one.
By the way, have you heard I'm 11-1 against the spread in the playoffs? Have you heard that?
Tell us how
11-1.
11-1.
You might have thought it was 10-2, but just go on my Twitter and you'll see. Nah, definitely not 9-3.
Not 12-0.
Cowboys.
If you had any confidence in those
picks. You thought the Cowboys
picks,
are going to beat the Niners or lose to the Bucs? Oh.
No, I thought the Cowboys. I'm 11-1. You can't give me that. You can't. Like, I got one wrong, and I'm getting the evil eye.
You got to not give your pick. If you were like, I missed that one, then I'd be like, no, you got 11 right. I just got.
If you had Stones and you were 11-1, you wouldn't be sitting here. You would have been like deuces. Like, I'm out. I'm good.
Should have been with C-Mac in Vegas last week. That's what I should have been doing.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I like the Eagles. I've really gone back and forth on this game because Patrick Mahomes, 9 times only, really, in his career has been an underdog, which is kind of crazy to me. Like, 5 seasons and 9 times as an underdog, that's it. Against the spread, he is 7-1-1 in those games against the spread. That is basically, if you're giving Patrick Mahomes points, he's going to beat you if you bet against him. But I just think the Eagles are better. From top to bottom, this roster is so good. I love them preseason. We talked about that. And they've exceeded my expectations, and I was very, very optimistic about them. They're just dominant on both lines.
Yeah.
They have the way they've built their defense is basically Howie Roseman's smart enough to know, hey, if you want to run on us and beat us, fine, but we're not going to let elite quarterbacks just get over on us. We're going to have a great pass defense. plays perfectly in this game. They got the pass rush, they got the cornerbacks, they have the playmakers on the back end. I just think the Eagles, top to bottom, are just better. And I worry a little bit about Jalen Hurts. I don't know if he can. I don't know where his shoulder is. I really don't. That's the one concern I have, other than betting against Patrick Mahomes. But yes, I'm going to take the Eagles 24-20, low-scoring game. I think it's going to be most Super Bowls to me start slow. We're going to get a low-scoring first quarter. They'll pick up after that. But I think I put 24-20, and I'm picking Hassan Reddick as MVP, 30-1.
Wow.
Yeah. Frank already wrote his gamer for the first quarter.
The script. I got the script early, and it was great. It was awesome. I'm going long shot Hassan Reddick MVP.
Roger heard you worked with me. He was like, hey, hey, come here. You got to put up with that guy?
That guy.
Brings up Roger. Brings up Roger
talk to
my
him.
press conference.
Talk to him for an hour every Sunday night.
Here's the script.
Yeah, see, it's funny. All day, like when our editor, Joey, asked us for the picks, I was like, am I just brainwashed having been around the Eagles all week? Like, they seem so much better than the Chiefs as a team. And then we're talking, and we're like, Jalen's shoulder. And, like, through the course of this podcast, I started to feel a little bit more nervous of, can he do it? Yes, but, like, I don't know. You got the Chris Jones, you got the Frank Clark, like that. I think that's going to affect it. So I think I've switched over during the course of this podcast, which means in an hour when I'm talking to the Eagles, I might switch back. But for now, at 2:54, whatever time zone Arizona is, Mountain Time. I know.
Everybody forgets the Mountain Time zone.
No, I know it's Mountain Time zone, but like when you don't do daylight savings, like you're screwing with us. So I will say Chiefs 27-24. I think the Eagles will get out to a lead, start playing really well, kind of be like, oh, yeah, this is the team we thought. And then the Chiefs will slowly start coming back. And when it gets down to crunch time, and it's even against a great team, Mahomes just has that clutch magic. And you know what else I'll say? Because I was reading this about Brady the other day. I love this idea that it's not just the clutch gene that's kind of like, oh, you can do it. It's also that idea of these guys who are so good and played for so long, and maybe even one of you wrote this, that it was Wetz, I think, who wrote it, that the defense starts to wear down over time, and you start to just understand what they're doing because you've been there, and that's one of the factors in clutch. So I love that description. So I will say Chiefs 27-24, Patrick Mahomes MVP because of his late game performance.
I will say that picking the Eagles does feel like I'm picking the 1992 Portland Trail Blazers to win the NBA Finals. Like, what am I doing? I'm picking against Patrick Mahomes? Like, what? This dude is Jordan. He's Gretzky.
Yeah.
He's Barry Bonds. Whoever you want. Patrick Mahomes is that dude. So it does scare me a little bit.
And he's coming off a Super Bowl loss.
I know.
Last time he was in this game.
I have a few regrets. But who do you got, C-Rob?
He's picking a tie.
No, I really do think it's okay to hedge in this game because I think it's as close as as it could possibly be for various reasons. I think it's a head-heart pick for me. Like if it was just my head, I'm picking the Eagles because I do think the Eagles, when you go top to bottom, their depth chart, it's a better overall team. They have more talent.
Here's a question: how many of the Chiefs players would start on the Eagles? It's probably not more than 6.
No, not only that, it's the reliance on rookie starters.
Yes.
I mean, the Chiefs have multiple rookie starters. The Eagles are like, we haven't.
See, now I'm getting nervous again.
I mean, look, like I said, I think top to bottom, I do think the Eagles have the better team, the better depth. They're well coached, like all these different things. But that's the head pick. I'm going with the heart pick because to me, Mahomes. The fact that they've been on the stage, a lot of the team's been on the stage. Yeah. Now, granted, they do have rookie starters. I bring that up. But there's leaders. This isn't a big experience for them. They've been through this a couple of times. I think that matters in a game like this. I think it's going to be close, and that's why I think that matters because to me, that experience comes out when it's close at the end. And so I'm thinking, 24-21. I think it's a field goal. Maybe Butker kicks a field goal to win the game.
Charles has Donna Kelsey as his MVP.
Nice. How about that, man? That's just I was telling.
He's going to get one of those jerseys. He's going to get one of those split jerseys.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. I like it.
But that's what makes this game so intriguing because I see it. I feel a lot of people are leaning the Eagles, and I get it. I totally get it.
That's why they're favored.
That's what makes me nervous.
Yeah. When the point spread came out, as I've talked about, it was Chiefs -1.5. For 30 seconds, and then all the money poured in on the Eagles, and they went up to 2.5. They've come back 1.5. But a lot of people, 2/3 of the money's on the Eagles so far. A lot of people leaning Eagles, but I just have it in the Mahomes thing in the back of my head.
And one other thing, go ahead.
Well, let's not discount too. Andy Reid matters.
Yeah.
It matters. Nothing against Nick Sirianni. No. Okay, nothing against. I mean, their coordinators are great. Nick Sirianni's been fantastic. Yeah. I mean, great story.
But if Andy wins
but
this,
I
he's a
think
top
Andy-
10 all-time head coach. Like,
Well, and Andy's
he's great.
How many times have Andy been through every
Yes.
possible scenario?
Yeah.
He's been through a ton of scenarios in the Super Bowl. You know, like it's
And
just,
his record in a bye week is like, what is it like? We're up to like
Oh, it's
24-2 or something like
Yeah,
that.
something
Because if you give that dude an
Mr.
extra
Better
week,
over here.
yeah, I know a few things.
11 and
Though,
1.
I'm gonna go
Another
try to
thing
play
I'd
craps
say
after this.
is I think the Chiefs have been much more battle tested this year. I think
agree with
in
that, too.
terms
Yeah.
of okay, like let's say a player goes out, which injuries are common in this game, though I hope none happen in the Super Bowl. Well, they lost Tyreek Hill and they were able to do it. When you think about the teams they've played, the AFC is just a better conference right now, especially when it comes to like quarterback play and all of that. And so like, yes, this Chiefs defense might not seem to have the talent that the Eagles defenses have, but they played the Trevor Lawrences, the Joe Burrows multiple times.
Played Russell Wilson
played Josh
twice.
Allen.
Ooh, that's
You know.
He played him tough. though.
Justin Herbert.
He did.
Like, I think that they've had performances against better teams than
absolutely.
the Eagles have, and
the Eagles
I
have
think that matters.
the Eagles have the easiest schedule in the NFL
And
this season,
and
statistically.
look,
Like
they
that's
still had a great year, and they're still
They
an
did.
incredible team and absolutely deserving to be here. And I think it's kind of like, although it's always fun, like March Madness style with the Cinderella teams when someone sneaks in here, these two teams are the top conference
Yep.
teams, and they deserve to be here. But if they both deserve to be here and one of them got here through a harder path, I think that's going to pay off.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. I think that's good. That's a wrap. We gave. I know.
Who's your MVP? Did you say Mahomes?
Oh, yeah. I think Mahomes.
Yeah, it's
that
almost
was it. Yeah.
if you're picking the Chiefs,
Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah.
impossible not to pick Mahomes. Like he's going to win MVP if it's.
I
Gonna
will
be.
say this though. I think the Reddick
Chris
pick
Jones
is
is a maybe.
Chris Jones is great.
Chris
yeah,
Jones.
yeah.
Yeah. The Reddick. I mean, if the Eagles win, I think
I think the Eagles have a much better chance for my betting people out there. Eagles, if you're on the Eagles have a much better chance of having a non-quarterback win MVP. Because you can see Hurts having a 130-yard passing day because they run it a lot, but Miles
if
Sanders
he
gets 60 and Gainwell gets 50. Like, you could just see nobody on
But if
offense really
Hurts
being
takes
blown out.
off, then
Yes,
that would be right. If he wins MVP, I think his legs will be a heavy factor.
I agree with that too. Yeah,
Reddick's on a heater though, man.
he's so
in
good.
These playoffs,
and he said, when I asked
destroying
him yesterday, I basically gave him the softball. Like, do you think you're getting respected enough for
He does-
what you've done?
he doesn't.
Yeah,
He does
spoiler
not.
alert, but he got a little heated. He's like, I mean, my numbers are my numbers. People can make up what they want and why I'm not a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year.
He
but
was mad about that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think he's got a little chip on his shoulder to say, this is the big stage. Yeah, maybe I wasn't a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, but I might turn the Super Bowl. I really do think. I really think he's an X factor in this game and could have a great game. Or it could be Josh Sweat, 3 sacks. I mean, this Eagles defense is so nasty up front. Man, they're good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. Or we'll get somebody. Somebody's going to get battered after this one. And Jori's going to be like, I kind of picked both, so I didn't. We'll see if Frank,
I'll be here all week.
11-1 sticks. So,
Hey, 11-1, really? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, 11-1 this postseason.
congratulations. Like I said, you don't have the confidence
Congrats
to
to
bet
the
it
Cowboys
yourself.
for wrecking it.
Cowboys.
I mean, 11-1, you should be sitting here in an Armani suit, okay? You're not.
I got
so clearly
your
you're not
J's.
betting
There you
do
go.
Have, you do have the J's. Everybody's footwear is pretty on point. All right.
Cameras pan down to the feet.
All right. Remember, we're going to be back on Monday to recap the Super Bowl and look ahead to the draft. So look for the show on Monday, early afternoonish. So not going to do the crazy late night tonight. You can get Jori Epstein on Twitter at Jori Epstein. You can get Frank at Yahoo Schwab. You can get me at Charles Robinson. Shout out to our crew here and at home on the grounds in Phoenix, making sure that we are looking and sounding good. Putting up with some schedules today. People who didn't come through on time. Not going to name names, but I'm going to remember that guy. Remember that guy down the line.
Some people heard things they needed to hear.
Jori let it loose on some people.
You know.
I was
Just
psyched
all
about
treat
it.
each other like professionals.
Yeah, it was good to see you. I love it when you show up fired up. I was like, all right,
There we go.
Now we're clicking in. This is great. As always, help us keep Therese Paylor's legacy alive. Visit breakingt.com. That's capital T/Therese to get your all juice tee or hoodie. Remember that proceeds from that purchase go to support the Therese Paylor Scholarship at Howard University. You can give directly to that scholarship as well as one in his name at Power Mizzou if you check out our podcast description. If you could, give us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and we will be back on Monday to talk about the Super Bowl. Peace.